Princess Liara stood at the edge of the crystal balcony, looking out over the floating gardens of Zithara. The sun of this distant planet cast rainbow colors across the sky, reflecting off the crystalline towers of the capital city. Below, citizens moved gracefully along transparent bridges, their voices soft in the gentle wind. Everything on Zithara seemed calm, perfect, and orderly, a world ruled by tradition, logic, and elegance. Liara loved her planet deeply, yet she often felt a quiet restlessness in her heart. She turned away from the balcony just as a loud alarm echoed across the palace. The council chambers, usually filled with quiet discussion, erupted in hurried footsteps and hushed voices. Liara's heart raced. Something unusual was happening, something that was not part of the careful plans of her advisors. "The humans," said Minister Callan, bowing slightly as he spoke. "They have arrived sooner than expected." Liara raised an eyebrow. "I was not told to expect a human delegation today," she said calmly, though curiosity tugged at her. "Who comes ahead of schedule without permission?" "They bring a warrior," Callan replied, his voice hesitant. "He has requested an audience with you directly." Liara's mind raced. A warrior? On Zithara, where disputes were usually settled with negotiation, debate, or calculated strategy, the presence of a human warrior was unusual. She had read stories about humans in the ancient galactic archives, brave, strong, sometimes reckless, but she had never met one personally. When the announcement came that the warrior had arrived at the main gates, Liara decided to meet him herself. She moved quickly through the palace halls, her flowing robes trailing lightly on the polished floors. The guards opened the massive doors, revealing a figure unlike any Zitharan she had ever seen. The warrior stood tall, human in every way, with broad shoulders and confident posture. His dark hair framed a face that seemed calm but alert, eyes sharp and focused. Around his waist hung the weapons of his people, not for show but for action, and his presence alone carried an aura of courage and readiness. Liara felt a strange mix of awe and irritation. How could someone so bold simply appear in her palace without protocol? She stepped forward, keeping her tone neutral, though her heartbeat quickened. "I am Princess Liara," she said, her voice steady. "You are far from your home planet. Speak your purpose." The human warrior bowed slightly, a gesture of respect, though unlike Zitharan etiquette. "I am Kale," he said. "I come with no ill intent. My people and yours share a common interest. I am here to offer assistance and, if needed, protection." Liara studied him carefully. He did not seem arrogant, nor did he demand attention, yet his confidence filled the room. She had always believed that strength alone could intimidate others, but with Kale it was different. He commanded respect without force, and that unsettled her. "Protection?" she asked, her curiosity growing. "We are not at war. Why would a warrior be needed here?" Kale's eyes did not waver. "Danger sometimes comes when least expected," he said simply. "I am here in case your world faces a threat you cannot see yet." Liara frowned, not used to such direct words. On Zithara, leaders often spoke in measured tones, carefully weighing every word. Yet Kale's speech was simple, precise, and honest. She felt an unexpected respect, mixed with irritation that such an outsider could unsettle her composure. Before she could respond, a commotion arose outside the palace. Citizens were pointing toward the main gates, their voices rising in concern. Liara turned to see a small crowd forming around a mechanical accident. A transport pod had malfunctioned, and a group of citizens were trapped. Without thinking, Kale pushed past a guard and sprinted toward the danger. Liara's eyes widened. Humans were quick to act, not waiting for approval or careful planning. The warrior leaped onto the pod, using his strength to pry open a stuck hatch and lifted a frightened child to safety. Then he helped the others, moving with precise speed. Liara felt her chest tighten. She had never seen someone act so decisively in person. Zitherans valued intelligence and preparation, but Kyle valued courage and action. His methods were unorthodox, perhaps even reckless by her people's standards, but undeniably effective. Once the citizens were safe, Kyle returned to Liara, brushing dust from his armor. He gave a slight bow. "The situation is resolved," he said. "All are safe." Liara's mind swirled. Part of her wanted to scold him for acting without permission. Another part, one she rarely admitted even to herself, felt a strange admiration. This human warrior, so different from the careful and cautious leaders she had grown up with, had shown courage and skill in a way that words alone could not describe. "You acted quickly," she said, struggling to maintain her calm. "Most of my people would have waited for the council's approval." Kyle smiled faintly, not arrogantly, but with a quiet confidence. "Sometimes waiting can cost more than acting," he said. Liara looked away, feeling a flutter of emotions she did not fully understand. As princess, she was trained to lead with logic, diplomacy, and careful thought. Yet standing before this human warrior, she realized that courage and decisiveness had a power of their own, one she could not ignore. The council arrived shortly after, their faces a mix of shock and concern. They whispered among themselves, unsure how to react to Kyle's presence and actions. Liara raised her hand, calling for silence. "Kyle will remain under our observation," she announced. "But for now, he is a guest of Zithera." Her words were calm, but her mind was alive with questions. Who was this human? Why had he come here unannounced? And more importantly, could she trust him? As night fell over Zithera, Liara returned to the balcony, staring at the stars. She thought of Kale, the human warrior who had appeared suddenly in her life. She realized that the arrival of one person, from a world so different from her own, could change the course of her future, and perhaps the fate of her planet. For the first time in her life, Liara felt a mixture of excitement and unease, and she wondered if she could stay calm when facing this bold, unpredictable human. The adventure and the challenge was only beginning. The morning sun shimmered on Zithera's crystal towers as Princess Liara walked through the palace gardens. The floating flowers swayed gently, and colorful birds glided between the suspended trees. Normally, she would have felt calm and peaceful in this serene place. But today, her thoughts were restless. The arrival of Kyle, the human warrior, weighed heavily on her mind. Liara's advisors, usually quiet and measured, were already whispering among themselves about the warrior. They were concerned that his bold actions yesterday, though helpful, had broken centuries of protocol. Some believed he was reckless, others feared he might disrupt the careful balance of Zithera's society. Liara listened patiently, though she could feel a part of her secretly admiring Kale's courage. "Your Highness," said Minister Kalen, bowing slightly, "the humans' behavior is unusual. They do not follow our customs. How can we trust someone who acts without permission?" Liara kept her expression calm. "I have seen his actions. He saved lives yesterday without hesitation. That is a quality we cannot ignore. Perhaps there is value in his approach." Callan frowned. "But our laws, our traditions, they exist for a reason. If we allow exceptions even for a single human, others may take advantage." Liara nodded slowly, considering his words. Tradition was important, yes, but what Kale had shown was something beyond rules, something that could not be measured by etiquette or ceremony. Later that day, Kale requested a private meeting with Liara in the palace's observation chamber. The room overlooked the city and the distant mountains of Zithera, where rivers of liquid crystal reflected the sky like mirrors. Liara entered cautiously, curious about what the human wanted. Kyle stood near the edge of the room, arms crossed, his posture relaxed but alert. Princess Liara, he said politely, I want to understand your people better. I know I am different. I do not move as your citizens do, and I do not follow your customs exactly. But I wish to help, not harm. Liara studied him carefully. His honesty was striking. Unlike many who might speak diplomatically to hide their intentions, Kale seemed straightforward. She felt both relief and discomfort. Humans were direct in ways Zitherans were not, and it took effort to remain composed in their presence. Kale, she said finally, my people value thought, preparation, and careful planning. Your actions yesterday were unexpected. Do you not fear breaking our laws? Kyle smiled faintly. Fear is natural. But waiting for perfection can be dangerous. I act when action is needed. That is my way, and it is how my people survive. Liara frowned slightly. His words were so different from what she had been taught. Her people believed in precision, calculation, and control. Humans believed in courage, risk, and instinct. It was both confusing and fascinating. Their conversation was interrupted by a messenger from the city's central council. Princess, he said, bowing, there has been an incident in the Eastern District. A dispute between two merchant groups has escalated. They request the presence of the princess or her appointed protector. Liara's lips pressed together. This was a minor issue for her council, usually solved with careful negotiation, but Kale's eyes lit up at the word protector. Allow me to accompany you, he said. I can observe, and if necessary, ensure no one is harmed. Liara hesitated. Sending him into a city dispute could be risky. Humans were strong and brave, but unpredictable. Still, his presence might prevent unnecessary conflict. She nodded. When they arrived at the Eastern District, the scene was chaotic. Two groups of merchants argued loudly over trade routes, and citizens watched nervously. Liara raised her hand to speak, but Kyle stepped forward first. Everyone, Kyle called, his voice firm but calm. Please stop. I understand the problem. Let us find a solution before anyone is hurt. The merchants looked surprised. Humans did not usually mediate disputes in their world. They acted, they fought, or they bargained quickly. But Kale's tone was commanding, and his presence gave a sense of safety. Slowly, the argument quieted. Liara observed him carefully. He did not speak like her counsel, offering long explanations or citing rules. Instead, he assessed the situation, acted decisively, and inspired respect. She could feel a mix of admiration and frustration. This human's confidence challenged her understanding of leadership. After the dispute was resolved, Liara and Kale walked through the city streets. Citizens stared curiously, some whispering about the warrior who had tamed the merchant's anger without force. Liara noticed their eyes on Kale and realized that his presence was changing perceptions, not only for her, but for her people as well. I see why some of your people follow you without question, Liara said quietly. Kale glanced at her. And I see why your people trust careful planning. There is wisdom in it and strength in patience. Both ways have value. Liara smiled faintly. His words reminded her that the differences between them were not weaknesses. They could be strengths if understood properly. But understanding a human was not easy. Their ways were unpredictable, their courage instinctive, and their sense of timing often startling. As evening approached, Liara returned to the palace, still thinking about Kyle. Her emotions were a mixture of curiosity, frustration, and admiration. She could not ignore the truth. The human warrior had awakened something in her, a recognition that courage and decisiveness, though different from her people's methods, were powerful tools. That night, as she gazed at the floating gardens from her balcony, Liara realized that her challenges had only begun. Kyle's presence on Zithera would continue to test her patience, her understanding of leadership, and her ability to stay calm under pressure. And yet, beneath her careful composure, She felt a spark of excitement. For the first time, she sensed that learning from another world, and from someone so unlike herself, could open new paths for her people and for herself. The stars above Zithera shone brightly, reflecting in the crystal towers. Liara knew that the human warrior, bold and unpredictable, would not only challenge her, but also inspire her to grow. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "I will remain calm, but I will watch carefully. This is only the beginning." The next morning, the palace of Zithera buzzed with a quiet tension. Princess Liara walked briskly through the corridors, her mind alert. The events of the previous days weighed on her. Kale, the human warrior, had proven himself capable, yet his presence still challenged her patience and understanding. She could not ignore the feeling that something deeper, something dangerous, was stirring on her planet. Minister Callan approached. His steps hurried. "Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly, "reports have come from the outer districts. Strange ships have been seen in the northern skies. They move with unusual speed and avoid our standard detection systems." Liara's eyes narrowed. "Ships? What kind of ships?" "They are unknown, Your Highness. Our scouts cannot identify them clearly. There is no record of such vessels in our charts." Liara took a deep breath. "Alert the council," she said firmly, "and inform Kale immediately. If danger approaches, we may need his skills." Minutes later, Kale arrived at the palace, his expression serious. "Princess," he said, "I have sensed a threat as well. These ships are not typical patrols or trade vessels. They move with intent and they are cautious. Someone wants to remain unseen." Liara studied him, noting how calm he remained despite the potential danger. His confidence was unsettling yet inspiring. "Then we must investigate," she said. "I will join you. My people trust me to lead, even in danger." Kyle inclined his head. "Then we leave immediately." They traveled to the northern cliffs of Zithera, where the floating platforms gave a clear view of the sky. From there, they could see the strange ships, sleek and dark, gliding above the mountains. The crafts moved in formation, scanning the planet below. "They are mercenaries," Kyle said, his voice low. "Professional, organized, and dangerous. They will not attack recklessly. They wait for the right moment." Liara's pulse quickened. "Why would they target Zithera? We have no reason for war." Kyle shook his head. "Some threats come for resources, some for power, and some simply to test worlds they think are weak. Zithera's beauty and resources may have drawn their attention." Liara's mind raced. She had been trained in diplomacy, in leading her people through discussions, debates, and treaties. But this required a different kind of thinking. Courage, decisiveness, and strategy under pressure. Kale's presence reminded her that knowledge alone was not enough. Action was also necessary. They descended into the valley where the first signs of intrusion were visible. Small devices had landed on the crystalline terrain, scanning the land. Kale crouched beside one and examined it carefully. "Advanced technology," he said, "designed to gather intelligence quietly. They are careful, patient, and methodical." Liara studied him, noting how his hands moved quickly, checking each device with precision. She had always admired careful preparation, yet she could not deny that Kale's instincts were sharp, even without detailed plans. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the cliffs above, a low hum, almost like a warning. Kale looked up immediately. "They've detected us," he said. "Prepare yourself." Liara felt a shiver, not of fear but of anticipation. This was the moment she had been dreading yet expecting. She followed Kale's lead as he guided her toward a safer vantage point. The air shimmered as the mercenary ships revealed themselves, hovering silently above the valley. Kyle knelt, pointing to the ships. "They are testing your defenses. Their goal is not just destruction. They want to see how we respond. Liara took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had always believed in the power of her mind, her ability to think and plan. But now she realized she must combine her wisdom with Kale's courage and quick action. Together, they could face the threat. As the first small team of mercenaries descended toward the valley, Kale moved with precision. "We cannot let them advance further. I will confront them directly. You must lead the civilians to safety." Liara's heart raced, but she nodded. "I will do as you say. Protect the people." Kale sprinted toward the intruders, his movements swift and confident. Liara watched as he deflected attacks, using both skill and instinct. The mercenaries were strong and well-trained, but Kale's focus and bravery allowed him to hold them at bay. Meanwhile, Liara moved among the citizens, her calm voice guiding them to secure areas. She saw fear in their eyes, yet her presence reassured them. Her leadership, combined with Kyle's strength, created a balance that neither could achieve alone. After a tense struggle, Kyle returned, signaling that the immediate threat was contained. Liara exhaled deeply, her mind racing with both relief and new questions. "Princess," Kale said, brushing dust from his armor, "this was only a small test. The mercenaries will regroup. We must prepare for their next move." Liara nodded, feeling a mixture of admiration and determination. "Then we will face them together. Your courage, combined with our people's knowledge, will be our strength." Kyle looked at her, a faint smile appearing. "We will need both, indeed, and perhaps I can teach you some human ways of facing danger." Liara raised an eyebrow, half amused, half serious. "And perhaps I can teach you some Zitharan ways of patience and planning." For a moment, the tension eased, replaced by mutual respect. The human warrior and the alien princess, two very different beings, had begun to understand each other. They realized that their combined strengths could protect Zithara in ways that neither could achieve alone. As the sun set over the valley, casting golden light across the crystal landscape, Liara stood beside Kyle, looking at the distant horizon. She felt a spark of courage and determination. The hidden threat of the mercenaries was only the beginning, but she was no longer facing it alone. For the first time, Liara understood that leadership was not just about rules and tradition. It was about courage, trust, and the willingness to act in the face of uncertainty. And with Kale by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited her planet. The morning sky over Zithara was bright, yet the air carried an unusual tension. Princess Liara stood on the palace balcony, looking out at the floating gardens and crystal towers. Normally, the sight brought peace, but today she felt unease. Scouts had reported that the mercenaries were regrouping. Their previous attempt had been a test, but now they were ready for a full-scale attack. Kale stood beside her, calm but alert. He had spent the night planning strategies with the palace guards, analyzing the mercenaries' movements, and preparing for what could be a dangerous confrontation. Liara admired his focus, even as she felt the familiar tension of trying to maintain control. "They will strike at dawn," Kyle said. "They are strong and organized, but they are not invincible. We must use the city's terrain to our advantage." Liara nodded. "Then we must act quickly. The citizens' safety is my first priority. I cannot allow them to panic." As the first light of dawn touched the crystal towers, the mercenaries approached. Their ships hovered silently, dark and menacing against the glowing sky. Citizens gathered in safe zones, guided by palace guards and Liara herself. The sound of engines and the glint of weapons created a tense atmosphere that reminded Liara of the stakes, her people, her planet, everything she had been trained to protect. Kyle moved with precision, directing the palace defenders and coordinating their positions. "Hold here," he said, pointing to a narrow bridge between two towers. The enemy will funnel through this area. We can control them here. Liara watched him, noting how his decisions were fast and confident. Zitherans preferred careful planning and detailed discussion, but Kale acted instinctively, combining logic with boldness. She felt a mixture of admiration and unease. Could she trust someone so different with the safety of her people? The first wave of mercenaries descended, moving quickly toward the city center. Kyle engaged them immediately, his movements sharp and powerful. He deflected attacks, intercepted weapons, and guided Zitharan defenders with a combination of skill and instinct. Liara, meanwhile, directed the citizens, ensuring that they remained calm and moved to secure areas. The battle raged across the crystalline streets and floating gardens. Sparks flew as weapons clashed, and the air shimmered with energy. Liara observed carefully, learning from Kale's approach. He did not hesitate, but neither did he act recklessly. He adapted to the enemy's movements, turning potential chaos into order. At one point, a group of mercenaries attempted to flank the palace from a side street. Kyle noticed immediately. "Princess Liara!" he shouted. "We must block their path! Follow me!" Liara nodded and followed him. Together, they coordinated a defense, combining Kale's instinctive decisions with Liara's strategic mind. They placed barriers, guided defenders, and created a plan to channel the mercenaries into a controlled area. During the fight, Liara realized something important. Kale's courage inspired the defenders. His presence gave them confidence. Zitherans, though disciplined and precise, sometimes hesitated in the face of danger. Kale's bravery reminded them to act, to trust themselves, and to protect their people without fear. Liara herself felt her confidence grow. Watching Kale, she understood that leadership was not just about careful thought. It was also about courage, decisiveness, and the ability to act under pressure. Her own mind, trained for strategy, combined with Kale's boldness, created a force stronger than either alone. As the battle continued, Liara noticed a young guard struggling against a mercenary. Without hesitation, she acted, directing another defender to help. The scene reminded her that even a princess could influence the outcome of a fight by making quick, smart decisions. Kale saw her action and nodded in approval. "Good work," he said. "Leadership is not just in commands, it's in action when it matters most." Hours passed, and the mercenaries began to falter. Their initial confidence waned as they realized that Zithara's defenders, guided by Liara and Kale, were not easy to overcome. Using the city's terrain, coordinated defense, and strategic positioning, the princess and the warrior pushed the invaders back. Finally, the last group of mercenaries retreated, recognizing that the fight was lost. The skies cleared, leaving Zithara's crystal towers shining under the warm sun. Citizens emerged from safe zones, cheering and expressing relief. Liara felt a deep sense of pride, not only in her people but also in the bond that had formed between her and Kyle. Kale approached her, breathing heavily but smiling faintly. "We did it," he said. "Your people fought bravely, and so did you. Together we made the difference." Liara nodded, a small smile appearing. "Yes, together. I realize now. Courage and wisdom must work hand in hand. You have taught me much, Kyle." Kale inclined his head. "And you have taught me patience and strategy. Strength alone cannot win battles. Leadership, trust, and careful planning are equally important." For the first time, Liara felt a sense of true partnership. The human warrior who had arrived unexpectedly had challenged her, frustrated her, and inspired her. Now she recognized that his differences were strengths, not weaknesses. Their combined efforts had saved Zithara. As the citizens celebrated, Liara returned to the palace balcony. She gazed at the horizon, the floating gardens, and the crystal towers, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. But she also knew that the threat had not vanished completely. The mercenaries had been driven back, but they would return, perhaps stronger, more determined. Yet for the first time, Liara felt confident. She would face whatever challenges came next, not alone, but with Kale and the courage of her people. Leadership, she realized, was not about control alone. It was about understanding, trust, and the ability to adapt in the face of danger. Kale joined her on the balcony, looking out at the recovering city. "Princess," he said quietly, "you have grown through this battle. I see a strength in you that even your people might not yet understand." Liara smiled softly. "And I see strength in you as well, Kyle. You have shown that courage is not just physical. It is the will to act when it matters, to protect, and to inspire." The sun set behind the mountains of Zithara, casting golden light across the city. The battle had ended, but the lessons remained. Princess Liara had learned to balance courage with wisdom, instinct with strategy, and fear with action. And beside her, Kale, the human warrior, had become not just an ally, but a symbol of how different worlds and different ways of thinking could come together to protect what they loved. The night air carried a quiet promise. The challenges ahead would be many, but Liara would face them with calm, determination, and newfound understanding. Together, they had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the greatest threats. And somewhere deep in her heart, Liara knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would shape not just her world, but the bond between their two very different civilizations. The morning after the battle, Zithara was alive with quiet activity. Citizens moved through the crystal streets, repairing minor damages and restoring order to the floating gardens. The city seemed unchanged to the casual observer, but Princess Liara knew better. The events of the past days had shifted something deep within her. She had faced danger, witnessed bravery, and learned the strength that comes when different minds and skills unite. Kyle stood at her side, watching the citizens work. His armor was lightly scratched, evidence of the battle, but his stance remained strong and calm. Liara could not help but notice the quiet determination in his eyes, a determination she had come to trust and respect. "Your Highness," Kale said softly, "your people are resilient. They recover quickly, and they have courage as well. It is not just my presence that protected this city. It is their strength, too." Liara smiled faintly. "Yes, and their courage is inspired by actions, not just words. Your actions have shown them the importance of courage, even when fear is present." Kyle nodded. "And your leadership has shown me that patience and wisdom are as powerful as any weapon. I have learned much from you, Liara." Liara looked at him, realizing that their partnership had gone beyond the battlefield. They had challenged each other, learned from each other, and in doing so, strengthened their understanding of leadership, courage, and trust. She felt a deep respect for the human warrior who had entered her life so unexpectedly. The palace bells rang, signaling a gathering in the central plaza. Citizens and council members alike assembled, their faces filled with curiosity and gratitude. Liara stepped forward, her posture regal yet approachable. Kale followed, standing quietly behind her, his presence a reminder of the courage that had defended their city. Liara raised her hand, calling for silence. The crowd quieted quickly, sensing the importance of this moment. "Citizens of Zithara," she began, her voice calm and strong, "we have faced danger together, and we have survived because of courage, wisdom, and unity. Today, I recognize the bravery of one who has joined us from another world, a human warrior named Kale." The crowd murmured in surprise. Humans were rare visitors to Zithara, and for one to be acknowledged publicly was extraordinary. Kyle stepped forward slightly, bowing with humility, yet his calm confidence shone through. He has fought beside us, Liara continued, protected our people, and inspired courage where it was needed most. His actions remind us that strength is not just in power, but in the willingness to act, to protect, and to serve. The citizens erupted into applause, their voices filling the Crystal Plaza. Liara watched, feeling a sense of pride and relief. Kale's presence had been a challenge, yes, but it had also shown her the importance of looking beyond differences and embracing collaboration. After the ceremony, Liara and Kale walked through the restored gardens, their footsteps echoing lightly on the floating platforms. The air was fresh, carrying the scents of the flowers and the gentle hum of the city's energy. "You have changed how I see leadership," Kyle said quietly. "Zitharan methods are disciplined and precise, but courage and decisive action are just as important. You showed me that wisdom and strength together can create something greater." Liara nodded. "And you have shown me that courage and action, even when unpredictable, can inspire others and change outcomes. Your presence reminded me that fear should not stop a leader from acting when necessary." They reached a high terrace overlooking the city. The light of the setting sun reflected off the crystal towers, creating a shimmering display of colors. Liara felt a calm confidence she had not known before. She had faced danger, learned from it, and grown stronger, not only for herself, but for her people. Kyle looked at her and said, "I must return to my world soon, but I will not forget this place nor the lessons I have learned here." Liara felt a small pang of sadness. She had grown accustomed to his presence, to the quiet confidence that challenged her and inspired her. Yet she knew that this departure did not diminish the bond they had formed. "Zithara will always remember your courage," Liara said softly, "and I will carry the lessons of our time together. Perhaps one day our worlds will meet again, stronger for the trust we have built." Kyle smiled faintly. "Then we will meet as allies, not strangers." That is a future worth hoping for. The next days passed with careful reconstruction and reflection. Liara spent time with her council, integrating lessons learned from the battle into future plans. She worked to balance strategy with flexibility, wisdom with courage, and patience with decisiveness. Kyle assisted where he could, offering guidance, insight, and encouragement, always with respect for her leadership. One evening, as the sky turned shades of violet and gold, Liara returned to her balcony. She gazed at the stars, thinking of the distant worlds, of Kyle's people, and of the challenges that lay ahead. The universe was vast, full of dangers and opportunities alike. Yet she felt ready to face it, knowing that courage, wisdom, and unity could overcome even the greatest obstacles. Kyle approached quietly, standing beside her without words. They watched the sky together, a silent understanding passing between them. No words were needed to acknowledge the bond forged in the fires of battle. Differences had been bridged, lessons learned, and trust earned. Liara spoke softly, more to herself than to Kale. "The future is uncertain, but I am not afraid. Not now. Not with the lessons I have learned, and not with the knowledge that courage and wisdom can walk together." Kyle nodded, his gaze steady on the horizon. "Your people are fortunate to have a leader like you, Liara, and I am fortunate to have witnessed your strength." As night fully descended, the city of Zithara glowed softly, its crystal towers reflecting the stars. Life continued, peaceful, yet aware of the challenges that might return. Liara knew that threats would always exist, but she also knew that bravery, intelligence, and collaboration could meet them. The princess felt a quiet confidence, a calm determination, and a spark of hope. Kale would depart soon, but the lessons they had shared would remain. The bond between human and Zitharan, warrior and leader, would shape not only her future, but perhaps the future of her entire world. With one final glance at the shimmering city, Liara whispered to the night sky, "We have faced darkness, and we have prevailed. And this is only the beginning." Kale gave a small smile, silent and steady, knowing that their time together had created a foundation of respect, courage, and understanding that neither would forget. The human warrior would return to his world, and the alien princess would continue to lead her people stronger and wiser than before. And in the quiet glow of Zithara, two very different worlds had learned that courage, wisdom, and trust could create bonds that no threat could break.